Welcome to another episode of the That's My Dad podcast. A little unusual today. We're here, our focus and purpose here is to inspire young men who may be going through a difficult time. And we have a guy here who went through an extremely difficult childhood. And I appreciate him having the courage to come and share his story. But his family's still around. The last thing we want to do is embarrass anybody or make anybody uncomfortable. And the only way we could figure to really tell his story, because it's a story that's incredibly inspirational because of where he is today, to know what he came through. So the only way we found to really tell the story was to leave him in disguise a little bit. And the production crew, I think, figured out a good way to do that. So we'll be using a fictitious name. Just have to bear with me through that. But I want to introduce you to Barry. Barry is a guy that I interviewed for my book a couple of years ago now. And I'll never forget the day, Barry, that we did that interview in my living room. I don't think you had talked much about your situation and growing up with your dad that day. And it was a very emotional day for all of us. In fact, I remember my wife saying, I can't sit in on any more of these, because she'd gone through 2 or 3 of those. But it's a difficult thing for you to talk about.
It is. My daughter was there that day, and she wasn't supposed to be, and had heard some of that story, but not all of it, that kind of puts it in a different spotlight, I guess, when I'm talking about it in front of her.
It was really interesting because we did that interview in my living room, your wife and my wife and the two of us, and your daughter came because she had been scheduled to go somewhere else, and something fell through, and she kind of at the last minute came.
Yep.
But she would end up playing a major role in that interview because of a story she told about you.
Yep.
But Barry, you're what we consider a script flipper. A script flipper is someone who takes a life story and comes out of a difficult situation, and they turn things around. And you're the kind of guy that we want to speak to our young men who we hope listen, and I know they do listen, because there are a lot of young guys out there going through what you went through, and it was a pretty tragic time. So what I want to do is just kind of ask you to share your story, your childhood, and follow on through.
Okay. When my mom was about 15 years old when I came along, she was, her and my dad were together. My dad was alcohol and dope, consumed his life. And then later, my mother's. He left shortly after I was born. I would say 2 or 3 months after I was born. My mother and I, from what I can remember, from the time I can start remembering, we bounced around from place to place, living wherever. She couldn't stay clean long enough to keep a job and everything else. So I lived with my grandparents. I moved in with my grandparents, and then it was sporadic. I'd go back and forth between her and them, and was married, I think, about 6 times in that span of from the time I was born till I guess I was 18 years old or so. I think she was married about 6 times. Basically the same man every time. Alcohol, drugs, abusive, beat her, and would have me as well, But it rolled on till I was probably, I think I was around 14 to 16, the first time I remember meeting my dad. He had moved to California, was in a motorcycle wreck. His mother lived here. He came out here to kind of rehabilitate through all that. And the first time I met him, he was in a body cast for the most part. Rough, and from that point, he said he wanted to get involved, and he's back and forth for a while. And I guess about the time I was 17, 18, I kind of just told him to quit calling because we could never stick to nothing. And from there, met my wife, my grandparents, my granddaddy. Just to, I guess, go back a little bit, my granddaddy played a very instrumental role in my life as far as helping raise me.
Mm-hmm.
Tried to keep me, on the path.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess it wasn't until I met my wife and met her father. I had gotten involved with, I was going down the same road that my mom was, and alcohol had become a important thing in my life. Drugs was creeping in. My wife's father, just a God-feared man, took me in. We was dating. I would living at home or with a friend or whatever through most of it. Got to a point where I guess they kind of knew what was going on with my home life. So they, her dad kind of made a deal with me that I could spend the night there on Saturday night if I'd get up and go to church with him on Sunday morning. And if I didn't uphold my end of the bargain the following Saturday, I didn't stay there. And he always upheld his end of the bargain. So it got to where I would rather just stay there on Saturday night because of the chaos that was going on at home. So it rolled on for a couple of years like that. Me running and acting a fool and just living how I wanted to live. And her dad just continued to live the gospel in front of me. He never preached to me. He never told me, I was going to die and go to hell for the way I was living. He never done any of that. He just lived the gospel in front of me, and which intrigued me to know more. And we were engaged for. My wife and I dated for 6 years. We was engaged for 4, and probably for the last 4 years of our engagement, I lived there with them. And I don't know many men, speaking as one, that would allow their daughter's boyfriend to live with them. Now, I slept on the couch, of course, and he didn't sleep. But he made sure I was where I was supposed to be all the time. But so I guess it was when I was 23. We was going to a local church here, and my wife and I was going to a college and career group. They were preaching, and prior to that, the pastor had come to the house and had talked to me, and I told him that that we had went to church that Sunday morning, and he done the every head bowed, every eye closed. You know, we'd done that. And if you died today, think you'd go to hell, raise your hand. I raised my hand. He come to the house that afternoon, talked to me. I told him that everybody else was lying too, that I would see them all there. Very dangerous place in my life at that time. Bad place. He told me I was wrong, you know, and I'm glad he did. But he left there crying that day, and I told him that I was okay with going to hell. And looking back, that might be the dumbest thing I've ever said, and I've said a lot of dumb things. So, but a couple of years later, we was at the college and career, and he was preaching, and that's the night that the Lord called me. And a couple of years later, my wife and I was married, and we're 20 years in now of marriage, and it ain't all been easy. My past creeps in from time to time, and trust issues, and doubt, and a lot of things roll in from just living the way we lived. And
it was a pretty emotional moment when you shared a couple of years ago. You shared your story with me. I don't think you talked to a lot of people about that for a number of years, did you?
No, it's something that I've kept to myself for a long, long time. Some of it is, I guess, at the time, embarrassment, maybe, of growing up the way we did. Some of it was the things we did, you know.
Are you still experiencing the pain from that? And how do you deal with that?
Absolutely. I don't know that there will ever come a time where I'm over it. That would be nice, but now the way I deal with it, I guess, is first of all the Word. You try to submerge myself in God's Word. Surround myself with godly men, and men that's not afraid to tell me what's what. I think every young man needs that in his life, no matter whether he thinks it or not. You need somebody in your life that will be hard with you, tell you when you mess up, tell you when you're going to mess up, and tell you when you do good. You know, I think you need that.
So, ironically, your dad called you today.
Yeah, that was kind of. He will call occasionally. He and I have not spoken in, I would say, 4 to 5 years. And in that conversation, his mother had gotten a hold of me and said that they thought he had pancreatic cancer about 8 years ago. And me and him we have never had a relationship, a good one. So when I heard that, you know, I called a dear friend of mine. Me and him talked about it, and he's the guy that stands in the gap for me. He told me that he said, "You do what you want to do, but I think you know what you have to do." So I went to his house. We talked about a few things, and he felt like he was facing mortality. I feel like he thought he was about to die, and he wanted to try to make things right. 38 years later, I guess he wanted to make them right. But so we talked, and he wanted to meet my daughter. He had never met her up until then. And I told him that I felt that, he'd have to prove himself to me before I could allow that to happen. But in that conversation, I got to share the gospel with my dad. That's all I could do at that moment, and we left on decent terms. And he and I communicated, and I would go visit for probably 6 months, 6 or 7 months, and he stuck to his guns. Everything that he said he would do, he did. Everything I asked of him, he did. When my daughter was roughly 12, I guess, 11, 12 years old, we went to his house, and she met him for the first time. And it was a great day. Everything went real smooth, real easy, and I told her she didn't owe him anything except respect. Just because that's the way we've raised her. You don't have to. There's no name you have to call him. You call him by his name. You don't have to call him Papa or Granddaddy or nothing. You just call him by his name. But so we set up another meeting, and found out that he didn't have pancreatic cancer during some of this time, and it was something else. And trying to set up the other meeting, it all fell apart from there. He went back to just doing what he wanted to do, and being his old self. So there was some regret on my side there a little bit, and it was selfish regret, I feel like. At the time, I wish I could have went back and not let him met her. But looking back at that was me being selfish. If he had hurt me for all these years, and even as a grown man, if you can't meet your granddaughter, then it'll hurt you a little bit, And looking back, that was how I felt about it. But it rolled on for a while, and me and him's talked since then, and I told him, it's just it's kind of a flag on the play. You can't. Yeah. I can't allow you to be that in her life, like in and out of her life, like he was mine.
Sometimes we tend to be kind of romantic about those kind of things, and you got to put the romance aside sometimes.
Sure do.
You've messed up. Dad, you messed up. You got to pay the consequences.
Yep.
This is the way it works. This is the real world.
Yep.
And one of the consequences is you don't get to see your grandkids.
That's right.
Tough luck. You should have done better.
Yep.
I think sometimes you just got to be tough.
Yep.
But did you ever come to a point, or have you come to a point that you forgave your dad and that you've been able to move on?
Yeah. I have sat on the couch with him, and we have talked and cried together, and I have forgave him. I did a long time ago, but don't think I really meant what I said. But now there's a piece about it. There's still a little bit of there's still some tension, some animosity when the phone rings and his name's on there. Mm-hmm. But I have forgiven him, and I've asked for forgiveness for a few things. There's been times probably where I feel like I didn't try hard enough as well, maybe. But we are. I have, but at the same time, it's with the current state that he's in, it's hard to trust.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, what would be your ideal situation with your dad from here forward? If you could write the script as to what's going to happen now.
Honestly, it sounds awful, but for him never to call again.
Yeah. That's reality, guys.
Yeah.
You treat your kids like dirt. This is the reality of what happens. And I think the message here for our target audience, for those young guys who are, needing to break the generational curses and flip the script. If you treat your kids like dirt, there comes a day where they don't want anything to do with you.
Yeah.
And I think you're at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody can blame you, quite frankly. 40 years of treating your kids like dirt. This is the result. Can kind of wrap up there. Throw away the crutches. Quit blaming people. And I'm going to tell you something. If anybody did have a good reason to make excuses, it's you. I mean, you've had it rough. And I think that's the message that young men need to hear is, hey, the guy I'm looking at right here has had it as rough as anybody I've ever known. And he threw away the crutches. No excuses. You're going to make it. And the evidence of that is 20 years of committed marriage and being a faithful worker, husband, and most importantly for me, a faithful, great dad. So we got with your daughter, and we just asked her to tell us what she thinks about her dad. And we want to share that with you.
The thing I like most about my dad is he's always there. He's always there supporting, no matter any sporting events, he's there. He's always there with a smile on his face, no matter if he has to leave work early or go to work longer on another day just to get things done. And he's at everything. He was at every gymnastics meet I ever had. He's been at every cross-country race I've ever had, every track meet, everything. He's always been there, and he's always come and supported me, and he's just always been there. My favorite story about my dad is, so when I was younger, I did competitive gymnastics, and one day my grandparents picked me up from school because I had a meet, and they said that my dad had had an accident. And at first I was confused. I didn't really know what was happening. I just knew something wasn't right because they were kind of startled. And so by the time I got home, my dad was sitting on the couch, covered in bandages, and I could tell he was in a lot of pain. Him and a guy he worked with were burning bushes and limbs and stuff out here at our house, and he threw a bottle that had a little bit of gasoline, not even a lot, on the fire, and it flamed up and burned him. And it burned him so bad he ended up having 3rd-degree burns on the backs of his legs and 1st and 2nd on the backs of his arms. It was bad. And the meet I had that day was an hour and a half to almost 2 hours away. And I remember coming in and saying, "It's okay. You don't have to go. I understand. I can tell you how it went when I get home. You do not have to go. I promise it's okay." And he looked at me and he said I wouldn't miss it. I don't care how much pain I'm in. He was not going to miss it, and he didn't. He rode in the car for almost 2 hours and then sat on bleachers for several hours after that and sat there and watched me compete and told me I did a great job, and then we all went home. And that was the day I knew that he would be there for me for everything, because he was in so much pain, but he came to that anyway. And then, Dad, I want to thank you for always being there. For always coming and supporting me with a smile on your face and never questioning anything about it. And I also want to thank you for being my partner in crime. We get into some crazy things, and sometimes I don't like it, but it's always worth it in the end, because we'll always have those memories. And I just want to thank you for being my dad, because I would not be the person I am today without you. And you've taught me how I should carry myself and how I should act. And I really thank you for that, because I'm going to need it, and I need it today. So, I thank you for everything. And I thank you for all the memories we made and all the more that we're going to make. And I love you.
So, so how does it feel to be a hero? Speechless.
Yeah.
You don't have to say anything.
Yeah.
You've been through enough. That's an incredible story. Third degree burns. And the part of it I don't think she told is the doctors the medics I think came to get you at the accident, and you told them, I'm not going to the hospital because my daughter has a gymnastics meet. And you wrapped it up and went down there. And then when you came, after you sat through that meet, came home, she told me that when she saw you unwrap, you had third-degree burns all over your back and your legs. And she said, when I saw what my dad had been through, I knew that he would always be there for me. So, Barry, thanks for being a hero.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been good. You're going to inspire somebody. You're going to inspire somebody. I know this has been tough, but thank you so much for sharing your story. That's going to conclude another episode of the That's My Dad podcast. And I think today we've inspired a young father to be a great dad, and I think we've gone a long way in breaking cycles of generational fatherlessness. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next week.